Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. This is episode 168. We're so glad to have you with us. If this is your first time on the podcast, welcome. Glad to have you here. Just want to let you know that you can get these podcasts in a couple of different ways. You can listen on Apple iTunes, or you can listen on iHeartRadio, or if you'd rather watch the video version, you can do that by going to celebrationbarreview.com/168. That's 168, and the video will be on that site. And if you'd like to find past episodes of the podcast, you could just go to our website, put in celebrationbarreview.com/ and then the episode number. On our website, you'll also find the entire podcast series going back to episode 000. Just look for the podcast link at the top of our site. You'll see every episode along with the show notes. So there's a lot of great information there. And again, welcome. We're really glad to have you with us. Now, if you're a returning visitor or guest or audience member, what's the right term? I don't know. Of this podcast, welcome back. Glad to have you with us. We're in this weird season, it seems to me, in a lot of respects, but in the bar exam is my context, in which we're in a transition. We've got people who are getting results or have just gotten results or about to get results out of the July 2017 exams. And then we've got people who are just beginning to gear up their studies for February 2018. So for the past few weeks, I've been bringing back an old series that I recorded many years ago and updated and re-recorded with new messages called Bar Exam Peace. And I've had some people ask me, why are you doing and talking about Bar Exam Peace, and particularly why right now? Well, there's a couple of reasons for it. One is, as I say, we're in transition. And the one thing that I think people who are getting results or just received results and the people who are about to study have in common is that this is an unsettling time. It is difficult to reconcile the bar exam and feeling peaceful. It creates anxiety and apprehension in many people. It creates dread and fear in others, loathing and hatred in still others. Now, there are those that pass and are successful, and so we've tried to intersperse some of these bar exam peace messages with some interviews of our successful July 2017 students as they come in, and I've got several of those online to come up for you in the next few weeks. So we're going to continue to give you those great interviews with people who've been successful. But today we're going to take another in the Bar Exam Peace series, and we're going to look at the idea of trust and why trust is so critical to being successful. Now, I shared this message with my students a couple weeks ago, and it got an incredibly strong response. In fact, we had a number of students who really commented and reached out to us and talked about how important they think it is to have that trust in their bar review, in themselves, in the process and what's going on. And so in today's message, I'm going to talk about trust in its various forms and why I think it's critically important when you're studying for the bar exam. Now, I know that many of you are waiting for bar results, and I've been trying each week to kind of update you on where we are in the bar results season. It's always kind of an interesting flow because some of the states are very specific on their release dates, others are more generalized. I would expect as this episode releases this week, we should see results, and this is always highly caveated, but we should see results in Arizona, the District of Columbia, Maine, Michigan, Ohio, and Vermont. That would be my expectation. In fact, some of those may have already dropped by the time this episode comes out. In the next couple of weeks, again, without being terribly specific, near the end of October, the very beginning of November, we expect to see results in Georgia, New York, New Jersey, Texas, South Carolina. And for us, in Celebration Bar Review, we have a lot of Georgia, New York, New Jersey, Texas bar takers. South Carolina is a UBE jurisdiction, so we've got a few of those. So we would expect to have a fair number of our students affected by the results coming out down the road. This week's a fairly quiet week in terms of results. Obviously, if you're in one of those states I mentioned, it's a big week for you, and we wish you well and hope everything goes well with your results. Now, whether you're taking the bar exam for the first time in 2018, or unfortunately you find yourself in the position of having to retake the exam in 2018, I want to take a moment and invite you to a special live webinar called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. This is a look at the powerful, proven way to pass. And we've been doing this webinar for a long time, and it's grown. It's been very popular, very successful. But one of the things that I wanted to do was to keep the size of the webinar, the number of attendees, relatively small so that we could interact and engage with you throughout the discussion and answer your questions. And so what we've done is to add a second presentation night. So now what happens is that this webinar will be available on Monday night and Thursday nights, both at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 4 p.m. Pacific. We wanted to make it a little easier on our West Coast folks. So in this week that's coming up, we have done by the time this episode releases, we will have done Monday's webinar. But on Thursday, I'm actually traveling to New York for a lovely, I hope, fall weekend with my son and his wife and family. And so I'm going to take Thursday night off, and we're not going to do a webinar on Thursday. So really, why are you talking about it? All right. Well, on October 23rd and October 26th, that's next Monday, next Thursday, we'll be offering the webinar. And to register, it's free. All you have to do is go to celebrationbarreview.com, click on the button that says Claim My Spot, and you can register for the date that works best for you. If you're watching this as a video podcast, just scroll down the page and you'll see the links to be able to register for the webinar right there. So no matter how you do it, we'd love to have you with us. We're going to look at what successful people do in order to pass their bar exam. And I got to tell you, it's so exciting when I do interviews with our successful students now, because so many of them say, you know, I started my journey with you on that webinar about how to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. So I hope that you'll join us on that journey as well. Again, it's totally free, Monday and Thursday nights, and just go to our website, click on there, register, and get all set up. We've got some free gifts for you as well when you register, so I hope you'll join us for that. Well, all right, housekeeping out of the way. I'll let you know how my trip to New York goes. Oh, one other big housekeeping thing. Many of you know I talk a lot about photo reading and paraliminal technology in the bar review. I had the extraordinary experience of spending a full weekend immersed in photo reading with one of the world's leading experts, trainers in photo reading this last weekend, and it was really mind-blowing. I am very excited. We are working on a collaboration for our bar exam students. I am really, really psyched to tell you about this. We're putting the details together. I'm not supposed to say anything, so I've already said too much, but just stay tuned, because this is going to be like one of the coolest things we've ever done. It's going to really supercharge your study, and I am so excited to share it with you. So stick around. Future episodes, I'll be giving you details very shortly, because we got a lot, and we know that time is of the essence. But if you're a photo reader or you've been thinking about photo reading, oh man, you are going to love, love, love what's coming down the pike. So anyway, just a little tease there. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about trust. As I say, I recorded this message for my students a couple of weeks ago, and it got an extraordinary reaction, and I hope that it's meaningful to you as well. So let's dive into our discussion about bar exam peace, the importance of trust. So we're in our series about bar exam peace, some words that don't seem to go together real easily. And right now, as I'm recording, we're in the season of bar exam results coming out from the prior bar exam. This is always an interesting time, and I use that word advisedly. There are some moments of great joy, and certainly jubilation and celebration, about passing this big high-stakes test. But for other people who don't pass, it is a very sad time. And I have to say that when I hear from students who are in that position, because they failed, it's really one of the heartbreaking moments for me personally, and certainly the hardest part of the work that we do. And it makes me think about one of the areas of exam peace that I think is sometimes lacking for people, and that's the whole area of trust. I think you've got to really be at peace with what you're doing, and to have that peace with the results, you have to trust the way that you studied and prepared for the exam. You know, you need to trust in what your plan for the bar exam is. You need to trust in yourself. And as I've talked about in lots of other places, I know that there are those out there who would say, oh, but that's all touchy-feely, squishy stuff, and really what you have to do when it comes to the bar exam is just to know the law cold. I wish it was just that easy, but my experience has been that most people that take the bar are smart enough. They got into law school, they were smart enough to do that. They graduated from law school, they were smart enough to do that. And frankly, they're smart enough and they know enough law to pass the bar exam. They're smart enough to do the study and the work, and yet they don't always pass. Obviously, a majority of people these days nationally don't pass the bar exam. And we've seen that result now for a few years, that the number of bar repeaters and failures continues to grow and grow. Well, why is it? I don't think it's because students as a group suddenly got stupider, even though there is a line of thought about that that's out there. I don't think it's that they got lazier, even though there's a line of thought out there that suggests that as well. I think it's a function of the bar examiners changing the test, setting much tighter, tougher standards. I think that the bar examiners are protecting a competitive workforce and that they're really trying to make it difficult for people to get into the exam. In other places, I've talked about this as the game of playing hit the piñata, except that the piñata got moved to a different room while you were blindfolded. And no matter how hard you swing, if you're just swinging at empty air, you're not going to be successful. Now, in light of all of that, I think it makes it hard for the people in our industry who are reputable to gain trust. And I recognize that when I come out and tell people that we can help them pass, as we've done for over 25 years now, that we're clearly setting ourselves up for some unhappiness if someone doesn't pass the bar. And I get that. I've done this for a very long time, and I recognize ultimately, however, that at the end of the day, it's not what I do, it's what the student does on exam days that ultimately matters. Still, I find that when bar exam students don't trust what I'm telling them in practice, when they don't trust what I'm telling them about their own abilities, when they don't trust the way that I'm advising them to study, they're going to have problems. When a student is working, we try to advise them study less, study more of this, study over here, study over there. But if the student doesn't believe that, when there's a lack of trust, then it's very difficult to help reach a successful outcome. Now, I heard from some students this week that had passed their bar exams, and that's great stuff, and we're going to share interviews with a lot of those folks with you, and it's very exciting, obviously, to see that journey. But I also heard from some people who failed. They're in a distinct minority in our course. But I do remember thinking about one of those students that failed in particular that I knew just didn't trust my advice. We were going through the course, and I kept telling them, back off, don't work so hard, don't be so frenetic, don't be so frantic about what you're doing. Trust the process of what you're doing. But I could tell that they really didn't trust that advice. I felt like in their own heart, they knew that they weren't worthy enough, they weren't good enough, and they had to prove that they were going to be good enough by working. Unfortunately, they worked themselves into a frenzy. They got to the exam. I think that student was fatigued, they were stressed out, and they literally talked themselves into being freaked out on seeing an exam result that would be unsuccessful. And because that's what they focused on, because that's where their trust level was, I think the result was preordained. So now, if you're thinking about what to do on an upcoming bar exam, I would say a good place to start the process is to think about who and what you're going to trust. Obviously, if you're in our bar review course, you've already made some of those decisions. But if you took somebody else's course and you're in that course today, then trust that course. Trust the choice that you made. Don't take a course and then not listen to the bar review provider in that course about what to do. It doesn't make much sense, regardless of the course that you're in. I think that when you choose a bar course today, you've chosen to take a particular approach. That's certainly true if you've chosen Celebration Bar Review. You need to trust that approach with our course because we've shown that it works empirically better than state averages for years and years and years. The big box bar reviews empirically don't work very well. Don't trust the garbage that you hear out there in the world that says, because we're the biggest, that means we're the best. Don't trust that the law school is telling you something because they're an unbiased observer. They're not. They're being paid by the big box bar reviews. Don't trust those things on their own. Don't trust your classmates who are bar reps. They don't know anything about the bar exam at all. Don't trust your employers to tell you what the bar is or should be. I am not making this up, but there was a comment on one of my YouTube videos this week from a guy who said he took the bar 42 years ago, and really it was so simple. All you have to do is brief the cases, drink a fifth of Jim Beam the weekend before the exam, and go in and take it and pass, and what's all the fuss about? Oh my God, can you imagine working for that guy? You know, there's a lot of idiots out there, and there are a lot of idiots that claim to know something about the bar exam. I promise you, most of them don't know anything at all. They haven't taken the exam, or they haven't taken it in years, or they haven't stayed current on it, and they don't know what it means. Most of all, don't trust the trolls on the internet who go around posting troll-like comments about anything and everyone. You know, I think in this era of fake news, most of us are becoming at least a little more aware that people really say stupid things out there, and they do stupid things. But I am continually amazed about the people that post wild, crazy, stupid things about the bar and about bar review courses, and then other people take that seriously, and they trust it and they believe it. And it's really amazing to me. I had a student who said, well, I know you've got all of those testimonials on your site and you've got all those interviews, but maybe they're all made up. And I'm thinking to myself, really, lady? You think that we would go out, hire people and do these interviews and stumble through them just to make them up? It's incredible what people believe might be out there. So the point is that you really got to be smarter than that. And you got to decide what you're going to trust. But why in the world you would trust someone you don't know at all on an internet troll basis versus a reputable course that's been around for 20 or 25 years is utterly beyond me. The point that I'm really trying to make is that I think it's useful when you're doing your research. If you haven't selected a bar review course, then go ahead. Look at samples of their materials. I've got hundreds of hours of YouTube materials out there. I've been around a long time. There are going to be some positive comments and there are going to be some haters. There's no doubt about that. But weigh all of that in balance and then make a decision. If you choose to take our course, great. And for those of you that did, we are very appreciative of that. If you choose to go with another course, then you've made that decision as well. I think what I really hate to see is that people move away from what they've already decided to do just because they get persuaded by someone else to do something differently. They take a different approach. Once you've selected your course and you're studying, trust the advice you've been given. Now, clearly, I don't agree with a lot of the advice that my colleagues give in this industry, and I explain in lots of places in these videos and elsewhere why I think that advice is wrong. But having said that, if you're in a big box bar review course and you paid them your money, then do what they tell you to do. If that doesn't work, well, I'm sorry, then come see me and we'll fix it, and we do that all the time. But don't try to do both things at once. Don't take the big box bar review course and then not trust what they're telling you. In the same way, if you're in our course, trust what we're telling you to do. Don't try to second guess it or overanalyze it. Just trust that it works. That's why we tell it to you. We obviously have no vested interest in anyone failing the exam. So I think it's important that you get to that level of trust that relieves you of the responsibility of having to filter everything you hear or everything that you read or everything that you see as you prepare for the exam. When we come and talk about the concept of trust, I think ultimately we have to end up back at square one. You have to trust yourself. You know, ultimately this test is about what you do as an individual. It doesn't matter at some level what course you take or how you study, as long as you have the minimum competencies, you should be able to pass the bar exam. But you have to trust that you have that ability. And so many people that I talk to have been so beaten down, so beat up either by their school or by work or the economy or the bar exam itself or the bar examiners, that they literally don't trust anyone or anything anymore. And most of all, they don't trust the process. They don't trust their own abilities. And so as a result, these individuals start at a deficit. The deficit is so large that it's nearly impossible to overcome without just kind of a clean reboot of their brain. That's one of the reasons that we use things like the Paraliminals package and meditation and photo reading, tools to help people wipe out some of that stuff, that bad stuff, and start over again. But at any level, you have to trust that you have the core competencies, the core abilities to be successful in this kind of an undertaking. If you don't think that you're going to be successful, if you don't have that trust in yourself, then I don't know how in the world you can pass the bar, much less if you did pass, how could you intend to represent clients after you'd passed the bar? I mean, can you imagine the conversation? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't really represent you. I'm really, truly incompetent as a lawyer. It was a fluke that I passed the bar. I don't think so. You have to have that confidence in yourself, and you have to trust yourself that you know how to do this work. Now, if you really don't trust that you have the core ability, then you need to discover why that trust is missing, or frankly, why you don't have the ability. I know that for some people, for example, foreign-trained attorneys for whom English is not a first language, there is a significant problem. They don't believe they're going to pass because they don't have a sufficient command of the English language. And that's a real thing. That's not a trust thing. That's a real-life concern. And so the first step for those people is to improve their English skills. You see, you've got to work on where the deficits are. But you have to discover what the problem is and then work to resolve that problem. When you have this underlying deficit of trust, however, everything that you do, everything you study, everything you read, everything you practice comes with an already weighted down negative expectation. And it's so hard to teach someone in that situation. It's hard to help them see how they can get better. It's hard to know how to assist them. And ultimately, it's hard to know what to say to them after the exam results come out. The thing that we want for all of our students, obviously, is to be successful. We want each of you to do well on these exams. But in order to do that, you need to trust that we know what we're doing. We know how to help you. We know how to get you there. I often use the example of Lewis and Clark taking the settlers over the mountains. They knew where to rest the horses. They knew where the attacks might be. They knew the danger spots. They had made the trip before. We've done the same thing. We've made this bar exam trip now for over 25 years, over 50 administrations of the exam. We think that we've reached a point where we can earn your trust. But if you don't have that level of trust, then something's wrong and it's out of whack, and you need to resolve it. And you should do that quickly, because I have found there is no long-term success in a relationship that's not built on trust. Now, that's a hard message for some people to hear today, but I hope you'll take it to heart and think about it, and think about where your trust lies. And in a broader perspective, think about where you put your own trust when it comes to your abilities and your skills and what you need to work on, and then act accordingly. And I hope that'll give you some peace as you study for the upcoming exam. Appreciate you being with us, and we'll be back soon with another message talking about bar exam peace. Well, that's our message and our episode for this week. Thanks for being with me. I hope that you found this to be a useful discussion in talking about trust, and I'd love to get your feedback and comments. Now, quick reminder, there's no webinar on Thursday night of this week, but next week on October 23rd and 26th, our free webinar, How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, that's 4 p.m. Pacific, Monday and Thursday. To register, just go to celebrationbarreview.com. Click on the button that says Claim My Free Spot. And if you're watching here on the video, just scroll down this page and you'll see the button to claim your spot there as well. And then I'll see you live on Monday the 23rd or Thursday the 26th. And let's find out how to make that next bar exam your last bar exam. Thanks for being with us today on The Extra Mile. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.